when you play the Chiefs, you don't play the same game you play the entire rest of the league. You just don't. Like, we force you out of your game, we get you out of your comfort zone. I feel like anytime I hear Dan Campbell talk, like, I'm ready to run through a brick wall for that guy. I don't know a single thing about him, never met the guy. But just based off of his passion, his words, you want to play for a guy like that. He's probably one of the best coaches, in my opinion, to play for in the league. But yeah, I think if we went up against any AFC team right now, we'd beat them genuinely. And I say that, and man, we better not lay a goose egg against the Broncos this weekend because I'm talking a lot of smack right now. We better win that game. What is going on, everyone? You are listening to the Antonio Chaudan Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Antonio Chaudan, and thank you all for tuning in. Just to give you a quick time reference of when I'm recording this, it is Friday, so it's after the Thursday night game or with the Ravens against the Bengals. So all of the numbers that I pulled are from before last night, because today I'm going to be giving my top 10 list through the first 8, 9 weeks or so of the NFL, like trying to hit the halfway point. Um, and it is drastically different compared to the first 4 weeks of the NFL. It's crazy what 4 games can do with teams in terms of getting better or falling from grace a little bit, coming down to earth. So let's get into it. First off, I want to get into let me get it here. Just to compare from my list from 4 weeks ago, just so you guys have a refresher in your mind. 10, I had the Steelers. 9, I had the Packers. 8, I had the Seahawks. 7, I had the Bills. 6, I had the Ravens. 5, I had the Lions. 4, I had the Buccaneers. 3, I had the Commanders. 2, I had the Vikings. And 1, I had the Chiefs. I can tell you right now that there are 2 teams that were on my top 10 list here that are not on my list uh, this week. So just a little spoiler there. But you know what? Let's get into it here. So number 10, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers still. Coming in at 6-2. They're the second best team in the NFL on the defensive side of the ball when it comes to points allowed per game at essentially 15 points per game they allow. Again, great defense. They were predicated on that. That's kind of the status quo when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And offensively, it has shown a lot more promise since Russell Wilson has come back into the fold here off injury. Averaging their last 3 games, 31.6 points per game. And this is very different, a very big improvement compared to the first 5 games where they were averaging 18.4 points per game. Again, with the infusion of Russell Wilson coming back into this offense, um, it's a very different look compared to Justin Fields, 100%. And we knew that was going to happen. No shade towards Justin Fields. They went 4-2 with him, and he did his job, right? But I think when it comes from a pure passer perspective, when it comes to that prototypical quarterback that we think, know, and love, Russell Wilson, he fits that mold. And I'm hoping because I like Russell Wilson. People don't like him sometimes just because they think he's too cheesy and stuff like that, Mr. Unlimited. Like, you know what I mean? Um, I get it, but I have respect for him. He's a Super Bowl champion. His tenure in Denver really tarnished his reputation, which sucks. And I fault a little bit of that with Sean Payton. I don't like Sean Payton. That's just me. I think he's kind of a douche, but that's just me. Um, he threw him under the bus. I felt like a lot, and that just wasn't right. With Nat Hackett when he was there his first year as well. I mean, anyone under Nat Hackett we've seen just hasn't been great. I mean, look at the Jets from last season, and even now they're 3-6, and they were supposed to be this vaunted new team that could potentially win a Super Bowl, but that's neither here nor there. Anyways, so looking promising for the Steel City. But right now I have them at 10. Number 9, I have the Atlanta Falcons. 6-3. They've won 5 of their last 6 games, scoring over 30 points in three of their last five. So this offense has come alive a little bit. Kirk Cousins is really showing why he was worth that type of money when they got him from Minnesota. They are eighth in the league in in points scored per game at 24.6. And their defense, you know, it's all right, a little bit under average, 20th in the league in points allowed per game. But look, I've been wanting a guy like Kyle Pitts to come to life a little bit. He has, with Kirk Cousins being his quarterback. Bijan Robinson has been able to put up some numbers. Drake London has played really well as well as Darnell Mooney, coming in from Chicago. So a lot to look up to, or a lot of optimism with this Falcons team, especially with a division that's always up for grabs, seemingly because it's been, and let's be honest, it's a one of the worst divisions, if not the worst division in the NFL. Um, but with the Buccaneers kind of right there, um, with the Falcons, obviously they've kind of dropped off a cliff a little bit in these past few weeks, unfortunately. But a lot of that has to do with the injuries that they dealt with, especially to Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin. So not necessarily their fault. It's just that's the NFL. It happens. Injuries are part of the game, unfortunately. But the Falcons are taking advantage and they are riding on a little bit of a hot streak right now. So we'll see if that's sustainable. But they could definitely be the team to come out of the South, the NFC South, and be one of those top contenders. I say top meaning like potential threats in the playoffs. I don't see them as a Super Bowl contender. I don't see them as the same caliber of the Detroit Lions, the Vikings, um, the Commanders, even the Eagles to an extent. I think the Eagles are a better team. And spoiler, Eagles are up here at number 8 on the list, winning four straight against bad teams, albeit. But in that stretch was the best game that they won against the Bengals, 37 to 17. Look, I would have said this even without knowing what happened last night against the Ravens, almost winning that game. But the Bengals status quo is they start slow for whatever reason. I don't know why. I don't know if they like just to have some sort of a challenge to go through the season and motivate them. But they're sitting at 4-6 now, but they're probably the best 4-6 team in the entire league. Having a dominant win against a team like that, I thought said a lot. And honestly, this recent game against Jacksonville should have been a blowout, but Nick Sirianni, he's so stupid sometimes. I feel like he just he makes it so much harder than it needs to be when it comes to this team winning. Like they almost lost that game against Jacksonville. They were up, 28 to nothing essentially is what it felt like, and they win that game 28-23. But it shouldn't have been that close, going for two instead of just getting the extra point. He just made it a lot harder for the team than he needed it to be, and a lot of people fear that or feel that same sentiment, especially Eagles fans. But man, Saquon, he's a dog. He is so good. I mean, he already has almost 1,000 yards on the season at 925 yards so far, and obviously that shows up in the overall team's rushing game because they are top two in rushing, at averaging 175 yards per game, just about, and 11th in points per game as an offense at basically 25 points per game. Defensively, they have definitely been better. There's been a lot of improvement compared to last season, allowing a little under 20 points per game, sitting at ninth overall um, in defense and points allowed per game. So definitely improving um, in that aspect and just overall as this Eagles team sitting at 6-2. So I don't have them, like I said, as that upper echelon of teams like essentially the entire NFC North with the Packers, the Lions and Vikings. They look fantastic. Um, but I have them sitting at number 8. Number 7, I have the Bills. Look, I know they're 7-2. They look great. Um, but they're riding off of a 4-game win streak right now. I get all of the above, but hear me out. Out of the 4 games that they've won in this 4-game win streak, those teams have combined for 11 and 23. And they have only beaten one team so far this season with the winning record, and those are the Arizona Cardinals. who are sitting at 5-4, and they almost lost that game week one. It was 34-28. It was a good game. They almost lost that game. Um, Defensively, offensively, top 10 in both, allowing only 19.2 points per game, which is eighth best in the NFL, and scoring nearly 29 points per game, which is fourth in the NFL. Josh Allen has been on a tear, 17 touchdowns, two interceptions, a little over 2,000 yards, and 211 rushing yards, as well as tagging on three rushing touchdowns. He's been great. Um, but look, like I said, I feel like competition matters here. Only winning against one, let me clarify. They haven't just played um one like team with a winning record. They've only beaten one team with a winning record, which were the Cardinals. They have lost to the Texans, and remember that beating that they suffered against the Ravens. So they're 1-2 against winning teams so far this season, and so I got to see more from them for me to put them up higher on this list. But look, the numbers are the numbers. I get it. They're winning the games that they should, and rightfully so. But 1-2 against winning teams. That only team, like I said, was Arizona week one. Not every team is the same week one, as we have seen, i.e. the or a la the New Orleans Saints, those 2-0 Saints, man, they were quite the team. But as we all know, there is more than just two games in an NFL season, and that can quickly, very quickly humble a team. And just lastly, too, they beat the Jets and the Dolphins, but they only beat them by 3 points in those games. Albeit that was the game Tua came back, and they're a completely different team with Tua on the field. But still, they that was a close game, a division game. I'll also give it to them, but at the same time, a little too close for comfort if you're a Bills fan. Anyways, Bills at number seven. Number six, I have the Packers, who are sitting at 6-3. They have won four of their last five games. That last game though that they lost after winning four straight was against the Lions, losing 24-14. Look, no shame in losing to the Lions right now. They're one of the best teams in the NFL. You'll see where I have them on this list here. Defensively, they're 13th in the league in points allowed per game at 21.6. But they are in top 10 in rushing allowed, as well as 15 in total yards per game that they are allowing. Ninth in points per game scored, 25.6. They are a top five rushing team where Josh Jacobs is leading them with nearly 800 yards on the season so far. Top 10 or yeah, top 10 in passing as well. Jordan Love, obviously he missed a few games there with Malik Willis filling in for him, which hey, he did his job. He kept them afloat while Jordan Love was out. Throwing 15 touchdowns and 10 interceptions on the season. He kind of reminds me of a Brett Favre a little bit, where he's a gunslinger. He will throw the hell out of the ball, and he can throw a lot of touchdowns, but he can be a little unpredictable in throwing a lot of interceptions as well. So obviously you want that to come down a little bit if you're a Packer fan, but this is a great offense. And another stat I have too, five different receivers have caught two or more touchdown passes, including one tight end. So four wide receivers, one tight end and Kraft. But that just shows the versatility of this offense because they have multiple guys that they can go to. You have Reed, you have Watson, um, you have Wick. You have a plethora of guys and Kraft as well, one of the better tight ends in the league so far. So they have a lot of weapons and there's a lot of promise with this team, but they're also in a tough battle in that very, very tough NFC North division, but Packers at number six. Number five, I have the Vikings. Obviously, they are no longer undefeated. They are sitting at 6-2. They lost two straight games, obviously, before winning their last game just recently against the Colts, winning 21-13 in prime time. Again, it's the Colts, though. They're not the best. But hey, you will take the win. Um, and this defense is a little bit different than it was in the first part of the season. They have allowed nearly 23 points per game in the last four games compared to their first four, where they allowed nearly 15 points per game. So compared to the first four, they're allowing about 8 points more per game. Obviously, that Brian Flores defense was something to really hang their hat on, and you're seeing them slip a little bit. So obviously you're going to want to try to shore that up as we get into this latter part of the season because teams are only going to be getting better from here. They have a few layups coming up down the line against the Jags, against the Titans. Look, I get it's the NFL, any given Sunday, blah, 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 but let's be honest. They should beat these two teams handily going into, in a few weeks from now, a divisional matchup against the Chicago Bears, who again, they've lost a few games here recently. Tough loss against the Commanders with that Hail Mary, and obviously getting beaten handily. The Cardinals losing 29-9 in that game. So I still think Chicago they're a commendable team. Definitely so far though they're looking up to the other three big dogs in their division. So I still think it'll be a great game though, even if a divisional game the two teams may not be the best matched. I mean, they're also one of the three teams that you face twice a year that know you better than any other NFL team in the entire league. So there's always that. But yeah, so like I said, Vikings still a great team. 6-2. They needed to right that ship a little bit because if you lost three straight and you're sitting at 5-3, different conversation than where they are now at 6-2. So they needed that. They can get some momentum back. Hopefully, they're going 8-2 into that Chicago Bears game. But time will tell. Anyways, Vikings sitting at 5. Number 4, I have the Commanders who are sitting at 7-2. Top three in points per game, scoring 29.2 points per game. They also have three victories where they have won by either 20 or more points. Best team they played in that stretch. And look, I'll be consistent when I talk about the teams that they play. They haven't had the most competitive schedule so far. The best team, in my opinion, that they played were the Ravens, and they lost that game 30-23. But look, they have beaten the teams that they've needed to convincingly, again, by more than 20 points three times. I mean, that's pretty good. Jaden Daniels I mean, he's been a sensation. He's for sure going to win Rookie of the Year. People are even putting him potentially in MVP talks. He has nearly 2,000 yards passing, nine touchdowns to two interceptions, so he's protecting the ball. That's what you need from a player of Daniels' magnitude, especially from a rookie player. Just have the poise to know when to not put the ball in harm's way. That says a lot. 459 rushing yards and four touchdowns. So he has 13 total touchdowns, four of those being rushing. And so the only thing I'll say about him in his game is that I feel like he may put himself, his body in harm's way a little bit too much, more than you would like. So I feel like they got to just tell him like, hey man, you're great. You're an athlete. You're a beast, but go down. Slide down. Don't take the hits that you need to. Again, he was kind of battling that rib injury a little bit, so you don't want to see that as much. But nevertheless, Jaden Daniels is a dog. Terry McLaurin, I love Terry McLaurin. I think he's one of the more underrated receivers in the league. Obviously, living close to DC, um, but being a Chiefs fan, I admire the Commanders. I admire the Ravens, of course, but I beef with them a little bit more just because they're in the AFC. But on the NFC with the Commanders, I want them to win. I want them to play well. And seeing Terry McLaurin with a good quarterback finally. I mean, you've seen it in his numbers. He has nearly 600 yards and six touchdown passes or six touchdown catches. Um, he's been really coming out over these past few weeks, so I'm really happy to see that. And as a team as a whole, when going back to the rushing, they have nearly 1,500 yards on the ground. So that's what you want to see. And you're seeing a very well balanced offense with Robinson, with Eckler. I have Robinson in my fantasy, and he has paid dividends for me. He is out. I actually just saw a notification not too long ago this weekend, unfortunately. Hopefully, he gets back and healthy because he is a great piece to that offense. Defensively, let's get over there really quickly. They are 11th in points allowed, allowing 21 points per game. So, a little above average, which is what you want to see, especially having a guy like Dan Quinn, defensive-minded coach, but coming in, putting his system in place and really showing that he is elevating this defense. But one little sore spot with this team on the defensive side of the ball is that run game. They are 28th in rushing allowed per game at allowing 143 yards per game. That is not great. So you can definitely run on this team, but they are fifth in passing yards allowed. They are only allowing 183 yards per game through the air. So where they really lack in the rushing defense, they make up for in the passing. So yeah, if they can shore up, even if they're middle of the pack, like 15th to 20th in rushing allowed per game, this defense would be so much better, and they would allow that much more points. So yeah, definitely need to shore that up with that run game. But overall, I mean, the Commanders are sitting at 7-2, leading their division, and they're one of the better teams, not just in the NFC, but in the entire NFL, in my opinion. Number three, I have the Ravens. Like I said, these were the numbers that I pulled. This was the list I pulled together before last night. But honestly, I would still have them number three. Probably, maybe number four, if I'm being 100% honest, only because, look, I know I said the Bengals are the best 4-6 team right now, but they're also 4-6, and you need to keep that in mind. I get it, a divisional game. And look, and maybe I'm one to talk for a Chiefs fan because they always play us close and they have our number sometimes for whatever reason. Um, but the Ravens, man, they almost lost that game in a shootout. Um, but look, that's besides the point. I have them three. Again, they were 6-3 at the time. Now they're 7-3. And just so I preface all the statistics I have, which were before last night. Um, they have scored 40 points or more in 3 games. And one of them came in an overtime win against the Bengals. They won, I think it was 41-38. But they're only one of two teams to have 3 games of 40 or more points. Um, the other team being the Lions. And look, Lamar has been on an MVP caliber type season so far. He's been on fire. He has 20 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, nearly 2,400 yards passing through the air, over 500 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. So 22 total touchdowns through 9 games, 4 interceptions. Again, not putting the ball in harm's way. That's what you want to see. Derrick Henry, I mean, who would have thought Derrick Henry would have been putting up these type of numbers with the freaking Ravens? He has 11 touchdowns and already over 1,000 yards on the season through 9 games. I mean, he's on pace to hit 2,000 yards again. And so look, offensively they look great. Like that I don't think that's any question. And they have found their rhythm, they have found their identity. And as a Ravens fan, you're happy to see that. But the defense is really where the issue lies. Again, allowing 24.3 points per game, 22nd in the NFL. 22nd. And look, I understand that the Ravens, they're supposed to be this vaunted team. They're supposed to be the team to beat alongside the Chiefs in the NFC or in the AFC, one of the better teams to potentially dethrone the Chiefs. I know we barely beat them in week one, but again, that's week one. Here we are now, and this defense really hasn't improved. That's like a real sore spot of this team, a team that's supposed to be predicated on their defense. So this isn't the complete team that I think we were expecting the Ravens to be at this point in the season. So again, where they can make up on the offensive side of the ball, they're lacking a little bit on the defensive side. They need to shore that up because when push comes to shove, you're going to need to be able to defend. And so far this season, we haven't been able to see that from this Ravens team. Again, compared to like a Bills team or a Bengals team, the Ravens are the cream of the crop. They really are. But like I'm looking at this from a Chiefs perspective. I think we can beat the Ravens. Absolutely. I think we can beat the Ravens. We can beat the Bengals. We can beat the Bills, Texans. Like those are the teams to beat, in my opinion. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where I stand with the Ravens. Again, a great team. I have them number three overall in the NFL, the second best team in the AFC. A little bit of spoiler, you probably know who's number one. Um, but yeah, that's just kind of where I am with the Ravens right now. If they can shore up that defense, they're going to be a hell of a lot better. Um, because again, offensively, Derrick Henry looks fantastic. Lamar Jackson is on fire right now. probably, in my opinion, if I were to pick MVP tomorrow, it would be Lamar Jackson. Um, but that's again, defensively, they got to shore up on that side of the ball. So I'll leave it at that. Ravens at number three. Number two, I have the Detroit Lions. Detroit looks freaking great right now. Sitting at 7-1. They have the highest point differential in the league at 110, and the closest there are the Bills sitting at 83. Um, they've beaten good teams. Like I said, I think the strength of schedule is important here. They've beaten the Packers. They've beaten the Vikings, who when they played the Vikings, they were 5-0, and they were the first team. They were the team to give them their first loss of the season. And like I alluded to, with the Ravens being one of two teams to have 3 games of 40 plus points, the Lions are that other team. And like I said, you can play bad teams but beat them. And those are one of my frustrations too when it comes to the Chiefs, for example. I wish we could just put teams out of their misery. Like the biggest, like I think the biggest score that we had in recent memory that I can think of was last season when we played the Bears, and we beat them 45-10. Like that's like the biggest differential I think we've had so far against like a team that I really thought we should have crushed. And other than that, I mean, we'll win, but we win not by nail biters, but I'm like, we beat them by like 7 points. We could have beat them by like 20. Anyways, I think I'm just, being a little bit more spoiled there. But that's besides the point. They've beaten teams, man. They beat the Cowboys 47-9. They beat the Titans 52-14. I mean, they're crushing teams. Like that's great. That's what you want to see. And again, I want to preface this as well. Jared Mother effing Goff. I mean, that guy has been on a tear. He is completing nearly 75% of his passes. I mean, that's unheard of. The closest was Tua, but he's only played like 2 or 3 games on the season. He's at 72%. Jared Goff, he's been involved in every freaking snap so far this season. 74.9% completion percentage on passing. It's incredible. 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Again, not putting the ball in harm's way as he should. Amon-Ra St. Brown, an incredible receiver. I love that guy. Sam Laporta, one of the better tight ends in the league. And they got that 1-2 punch with Gibbs and Montgomery, the best 1-2 punch in backfield in the entire league. It's not even close. Like those guys are incredible. Montgomery can have one game, he has 100 yards. Gibbs comes back the next game, has 150. Then Montgomery can get another 120. I mean, these guys are just relentless. And on the defensive side of the ball, they're still good, and they were able to pick up that guy from the Browns after Aiden Hutchinson got knocked out. The name is slipping me, but again, adding to that defensive line, a great defense overall. And so, I mean, this is the best team in the NFC in my opinion. Like I think they can go head to head with any team right now, and they could win. Um, Definitely a team to look out for that can. Yeah, well, a team that's looking to right the wrongs of last season, right? I think they should have beat that 49er team in the NFC Championship game. They just couldn't pull it off. I thought they were the better team though, and I thought um, they would have been a tougher opponent compared to the Niners. Um, but they're hungry. And I think Dan Campbell has been a great coach for this team. He has made them a hungry team, and but they don't take things for granted. And that's the other thing. I feel like anytime I hear Dan Campbell talk, like I'm ready to run through a brick wall for that guy. I don't know a single thing about him. Never met the guy, but just based off of his passion, his words, you want to play for a guy like that. He's probably one of the best coaches, in my opinion, to play for in the league. So yeah. Anyways, Lions at number two, strong number two. Um, but no surprise, I have the Chiefs number one still. They're undefeated. They've won 14 straight games going into last season. Um, and so far, I mean, offensively, more specifically from a Mahomes perspective, this last game against the Buccaneers was the best I've seen him. It's the first game this season he hasn't thrown a freaking interception. He threw 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. I'll take that all day. With the addition of DeAndre Hopkins, who already has 2 touchdowns. I mean, yeah, he had what, 80 something, like 84 yards or something like that, 2 touchdowns in his second game with the Chiefs. I mean, I think it's just kind of foreshadowing of what is to come in this season. Kelsey's starting to come back a little bit. He had 90 yards the previous game, and then this past game against the Buccaneers, he had 100 yards, 14 receptions, which I think is like the most in his career. He had a career high in receptions. Had that fumble. Don't love that, but gotta keep the rock in there, Kelsey. Come on. Anyways, um, this is the worst I've seen our defense so far. It's the worst I've seen them. But look, the defense shouldn't have been put in that position to begin with. We should have held them to 17 because, I mean, the Chiefs are going out there and they go three and out like a little bit, like around 2 minutes, and let the Bucks come down and score. Like the offense, we should have had a better execution on our end to for us not to go into overtime. But look, I'll take the win. Even with the defense looking as bad as they did, we only allowed 24 points. I mean, we're still on that streak of not allowing, I forget, like 20 something or 30 something games straight where we haven't allowed um 28 or more points in a game, which is a crazy stat. Um, but look, I'll take that. And look, so far this season, even with that bad game against the Bucks, our defense has allowed 18.4 points per game, which is fourth in the entire NFL, third in rushing allowed per game at 83.9, 15th in yards. Want to shore that up a little bit. We're allowing about 100 or 210 yards per game through the air. So got to shore that up a little bit. But look, we've dealt with some injury on that side of the ball, particularly when it comes to our corners. So, I'm not looking too much into that. But our defense has been great so far this season. And look, even with a little bit of a lackluster offensive performance so far this season, we're still 10th in the league in points per game, 25.4, 14th in rushing per game, 122.4, and 10th in passing at 230.1 yards per game through the air. So, look, I think we have a pretty well balanced offense, and we're not at full strength yet. We are not at full strength at all. Pacheco is supposed to come back towards the end of this month. Having that 1-2 punch with Pacheco and Hunt, I mean, Kareem, he's been a godsend because as soon as he came in, hit the ground running. He has already over 400 yards on the ground. He has like three or four touchdowns. He's been killing it, and I'm glad to have him back. And obviously, with the addition of DeAndre Hopkins, it's huge to help out with alongside with Worthy and Hardman, Watson. So it's been good on that side of the ball. Kelsey's starting to come into his own a little bit again, which I'm happy to see because everyone was so ready to write him off already. Just shut up, man. Kelsey's still that guy. Um, so yeah, I'm happy with what I've seen so far with the Chiefs. Like I said, um, and I alluded to, and this was on Spotify. I didn't do it on YouTube. It was just strictly on Spotify. So if you haven't heard of it, go. It was just my preview of the Buccaneers game. But I alluded to a little bit where I'm talking about some of these other great teams in the NFL. Doesn't matter how many points they're putting up per game, like the Ravens, for example, or the Bills. When you play the Chiefs, you don't play the same game you play the entire rest of the league. You just don't. Like we force you out of your game, we get you out of your comfort zone. And we're sitting at 8-0 right now. Um, I think the best team, if we were to play right now, that we could potentially lose to are the Lions. Genuinely. I mean, they're playing great. I think if we played the Ravens right now again, I think we would beat them. I think we would beat this Bills team. I think we could beat a Commander team. I'm just mainly, obviously, strictly thinking AFC, just because that's the conference we're in. Those are more of the teams that we play that we need to be worried about, especially when it comes to the playoffs. Um, but yeah, I think if we went up against any AFC team right now, we'd beat them genuinely. And I say that, and man, we better not lay a goose egg against the Broncos this weekend because I'm talking a lot of smack right now. We better win that game. But that's besides the point. And I just want to finish out here with these particular stats. On the season right now, we are converting 53% of our third down conversions, which leads the league in the NFL. We lead the league in third down conversions. And we are third in the league on fourth down conversion. We are 6 of 7. I think the Bills actually lead that stat at 100%. I don't know the exact number of fourth down attempts that they've had. We are 6 for 7, 85% conversion rate on fourth down. And something that I also want to point out from our opponent's standpoint, teams that play us so far this season, they are 36% on third down conversions and 46% on fourth down conversions. So 6 of 13. I don't know the exact number of third down conversions, but it's 36%. When I say number, I mean like attempts. That's more so what I mean. But yeah, converting 53% on third down, allowing 36% on third down. Converting 85% on fourth down, allowing 46% on fourth down. I mean, you know what that tells me? That tells me that we are executing when we need to. We are staying on the field when we need to. We are forcing opposing teams off the field to get our offense back on the field. Um, and we're just making winning plays. We are. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. When you're making timely plays that matter, that can win you the game. And at the end of the day, even if it doesn't look pretty, and I have to remind myself this as a Chiefs fan, like, yes, I would love to win 37-3, but if we win 20-13, I can't be mad at that because a win is a win. Um, and as much as like I said, I would love to be one of those teams that win 3 games that have 40 points in 3 games and win by like 30. That's not necessarily this Chiefs team, but that's okay because sometimes that's not always the recipe for success. The recipe for success is consistency. It's poise and in the times in the game that matter. And it's execution when it matters. And that's what this Chiefs team has been able to do. We've been able to get those teams off on third or fourth down and bring our offense back. And we've been able to convert and either get 3 points or get a touchdown when we need to. And that's why, in my opinion, the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL right now. They're 8-0 on the season. And I am, looking forward to the stretch here where we're going to be, again, playing some tough teams. The Broncos they always give us fits for whatever reason. Um, and we play the Bills here in the next few weeks, and then later down the road, like around Christmas, we play the Steelers. Um, we play the Chargers again. So we play the Broncos twice, the Chargers again, the Raiders again. We're gonna win that game. Um, I think we may play the Texans. I don't have an exact look or memory of the schedule right now, but look, it's not gonna be cakewalk. But I mean, I so far I'd be a fool if I didn't favor the Chiefs in any of the games that we have coming forward. So. Not calling an undefeated season, but I just got to see it. I got to see a team beat us for me to be like, all right, we need to improve. And obviously, we need to improve. But the fact that we need to improve and we're still getting better and we're winning these games, I'll take that. Any Chiefs fan would take that, as they should. So I'll leave it there. Thank you all for listening. Again, I appreciate the flexibility with you all in terms of just my inconsistent uploads. It's just been really busy with work and stuff. And I said on the last podcast I did, where it was just on Spotify, that friend and I took a vacation a few weeks ago. We went to Quebec, which was super cool. Definitely would go back. But anyways, I'm going to try again to just be more consistent, but bear with me. But I appreciate you listening nevertheless. So yeah, leave it at that. Thank you all for listening. Catch you all next time. Peace.